Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week on the Coastal Sports Digital Network and 1029 The Game. So glad that everybody could be with us this evening. I'm Lloyd Vance, veteran NFL writer. I'm here with my tag team partner, Kevin Midgette, for another week. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing well, doing well. A lot going on this week.
Yeah, and this is not my favorite week. You know how they do it in terms of a doubleheader on Monday night. Don't they know I have my show going? But NFL is going right now. Tampa Bay is up 14-10 over the Texans. It's pretty exciting game. Uh, who do you think's going to win this one, Kevin?
Well, I tell you one thing, the NFL scheduling these two games while our show's going on. Clearly, the defenses for both teams didn't show up, so they could actually watch and listen to our show. So I appreciate that from the Texans and Buccaneers. I'm looking back right now, and I'm just wishing I would have bet the over before the game started.
Yeah, I knew Kevin was going to either go one or two ways. Everybody either talk about his fantasy team, the implications there, or any cheddar cheese he put down on the game. Hopefully the over. The over. Houston was a 2.5 point favorite in this one. Over under is 42.5. So yeah, I kind of agree with Kevin there. That by the end of this whole thing, they'll probably hit that. And I picked the Bucks in terms of the money line, and we'll see if they're able to get this done. But the Bucks lost another offensive lineman. They did not have Worth out there, and they lost another guy. So we'll see if they're able to overcome that. Baker Mayfield doing a nice job, and Stroud seems to be kind of locked in tonight. So that should be a good game. The late game, Kevin. Now, talk about fantasy football implications, and I saw you this weekend, and you and I were talking. Brock Bowers, is he hurt? Is he not hurt? And I need him in my lineup, So it seems like he's active, and he's going to play in this one. The Chargers 1-0, facing off the surprisingly 1-0 Las Vegas Raiders. This is out there in the desert. What do you think about this one? The Chargers are a 3.5 point favorite, over under 47.
I went. It's weird. Like when you sit there from the fantasy aspect, I told you as well because we both have Bowers on our team. If Bowers aggravates something before the game and he can't go, you're kind of hosed at that point because there is no one really hardly to add for a 10 o'clock game. So what I did was, and I told you, is I added Mayer, the backup tight end for the Raiders, just in case you don't want to take a zero on that, a big squad douche. So you sit there, you add him, and you hopefully don't have to use him. I looked into it, and I'm already regretting what I picked. I went with the over. So after seeing these guys hang points in the first game, that means the second game is going to be a little more tight. I have a feeling.
Yeah, and I'm going to need cup of coffee or something, man. That's a little late, and that thing's probably going to end about 1 o'clock in the morning. But as we know, ESPN, ABC, they love it. They love the ratings. I mean, they're going to have an overlap at a certain point, but they're going to have huge audiences. Once again, the NFL, the biggest, most watched TV shows in terms of all of TV and streaming and everything. So, no one's crying for them. I think it's a good chance for them to kind of showcase. But I'll be glad when everything goes back to normal and you have one Thursday night game, everything on Sunday, including Sunday night football, which seems to be my favorite lately, Kevin. And then one game on Monday. So lots of football, lots to get into here in Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Big thing, Kevin. Unfortunately this week, I said it after week one, and I was telling Nate, I was like, somebody's going to get smoked. You know what I mean? Somebody's going to get hurt. And you started seeing major injuries around the league, particularly Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Bengals. They win the game, but he has turf toe or hurt a ligament in his foot. He's going to have foot/toe surgery, and they're talking about how he may be out 3 to 4 months. Is talking about that injury. Do you think he's going to be able to come back from this? And is this a death sentence to their season? Because his backup, Jake Browning, he's okay, but he was not on the same page a lot of times when he played with Jamar Chase in the past.
It seems to be the curse of Joe Burrow. His whole career now, he's starting to be that guy. He can't string together healthy seasons back to back, which is unfortunate because he's unbelievable talent. That being said, with Browning, they could possibly, hang around the playoff chase for a little bit, see if you can get Joe Burrow back. But finally, Cincinnati gets out of the gate here 2-0, And it's like, all right, they got through the September slump, hopefully, and then Burrow goes down, and they're going to be another team fighting around 500, trying to sniff their way into the playoffs, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's going to be a situation where I think that eventually the Ravens, yes, the Ravens are 1-1, but I think the Ravens, they seem to be ascending. Now the good thing for Cincinnati is they don't play the Ravens until week 13. That game's in Baltimore, and then they're at Cincinnati in week 15. So, we'll see how it goes at the end of the season, but that is a tough injury to overcome. As we know, quarterbacks have to be able to slide, move around the pocket. Burrow is a little bit more mobile than a lot of people give him credit for. But yeah, that's a tough one for them, and they're going to have to lean on Brown and the rest of the guys that are on that offense. They do still, obviously, we talked about Jamar Chase. They still have T. Higgins, tight end Gesicki. Um, so we'll see. But yeah, 2-0 start. They're not going to get off to that dreaded 0-3 start that they did in 2019, 2024, and they weren't able to make the playoffs. So you know it's something they're going to have to work through. And like I was saying earlier, it's going to happen. It's just a matter when somebody gets hurt around the National Football League, and unfortunately, you don't want it to be your quarterback. Thursday night, similar situation. Jaden Daniels, he got his knee banged up, and you and I were talking about last week, I think, about his slight frame, and you don't want him taking hits when he's taking off, and unfortunately, he took a hit, and he was able to play through it, but they're on the fence whether he's going to be ready for Washington's game this week when they host the Raiders. So, Jaden Daniels, do you think he's going to be able to overcome that? What do you think in terms of that injury?
Um, if I'm Washington, I might sit him out for this one. I might try to let him get healthy, trying to, get everything a little more organized, I guess, with his body. That being said, he's taken more hits than any quarterback in the NFL over the first 2 weeks. It's just outside the pocket, in the pocket. He gets hit a lot. And we said, once again, his, small frame, smaller frame. And it just doesn't look like it's going to bode well for him down the road.
Yeah, and you have Larry Tunsil that they brought over from the Texans, and he's doing a pretty good job at the left tackle position, but it's kind of patchwork after that. They had Allegretti that they had come over, a Bedance at center coming from Dallas Cowboys, and you're right, they've always had a problem kind of controlling, the pressure on Jane Daniels. Yes, he's young and he's dynamic and can move around, but you don't want your quarterback kind of running for his life, and you want enough times that Terry McLaurin can get open down the field. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for them in terms of Jaden Daniels down. The other big injury from that game is, it was unfortunate, Austin Eckler. We talk about these older running backs and the demands on the position and just touches. It didn't seem like much at the time, but he goes down and he had that dreaded Achilles injury, and he's going to be lost for the season. So JCM, everybody's talking about Krosky Merritt. Is this his time, for everybody to pick him up? And is this young guy going to be the next fantasy football star?
If people haven't picked him up by now and he's still available in your league, yeah, go get him. The thing is, I don't know what Washington's doing with the running back situation either, because he looked impressive in the week one, and then it looked like he was kind of written off a little bit in week two. So it's like, you got a young kid like that, feed him the ball, If anything, your quarterback's not taking hits. So I think Washington's still trying to process what they're doing with the running back situation, but he's their lead guy now. He's the go-to.
Yeah, and they traded Brian Robinson Jr. He's on the Niners now, and we'll see what the other backs bring to the table. But yeah, I think JCM is going to be their guy going forward, and um, yeah, it's just tough. You got to stay healthy week to week, and that's why the crazy thing, Kevin, and you and I talked about it in the spring. 17-week season, that's a lot of physicality. And then they're talking about, maybe in the next collective bargaining agreement around 2030 or so, they'll go to an 18-game schedule. I mean, do you think that's wise? I mean, I know it's billionaires trying to get any more money and from these TV networks and everything, but do you really think that's a good idea? And can players make it that far?
I think it's a horrendous idea. I think it's terrible for the wear and tear these guys get. I mean, you look at someone like Joe Burrow, we were just talking about. Say you miss 3 months. If you're playing any other sport, you can come back and play half the season still. In the NFL, you don't have that kind of time. And let's be honest, 18 games was happening. 17 was the setup for 18. They didn't want to go 16 to 18. So they're getting these guys acclimated to play in the one extra game. And then down the road, oh, here's another extra game for you, because at the end of the day, it's all about business.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They want that money, and you got every TV streaming apparatus and network involved now. They have games on YouTube, Netflix, and Prime. They're all involved, so they're getting revenue streams coming from everywhere. And so I do agree with you, and yes, the salary cap will raise and everything, but the players, as we know, majority of their contracts are not guaranteed. Yes, they get some guaranteed money up front, and everybody talks about the Micah Parsons type deal, 47 million per season. But there's so many lunch pail guys around the National Football League. Your backup guard, a third string linebacker that's a special teamer, and they're making kind of the veteran minimum. And unfortunately, a lot of those guys, the average NFL career is probably around 2 to 3 years. And it's just a churn. And you're right, the toll it takes on their bodies is just tremendous. I do a lot of work with a lot of former players, and um you talk to them, and you see them, they're like, I remember one guy, I was at a camp with him, and he did a kids camp, and I said, "Oh, how'd it go? How you feeling?" And he and I were right around the same age. He goes, "My knees are killing me." You know what I mean? And he literally was just kind of coaching the kids around the field, standing around. He said, but the game, and he had a guy that played over 10 years. It just takes a lot on him. So we'll see how that works, and in terms of the 18 game season. But yeah, I do agree with you. It is coming. Another big injury last night, and we'll go over all the games and that we're talking about. JJ McCarthy, though, for the Minnesota Vikings, is crazy. One week he's with a big comeback win and everything, and this week he gets the dreaded high ankle sprain. And that's a ligament type of situation. It's just not a twisted ankle where they tape it up and get your butt back out there. They're saying 3 to 4 weeks for him. And I wanted to get your opinion on this. He's not going to play, but your boy, Carson Wentz, he's going to be back starting under center for your Minnesota Vikings. I mean, how many lives does this guy have? He's like a cat. I mean, it's crazy. I mean,
I'll put it this way: in Wentz we trust. No, no,
no.
I had that T-shirt back in the day, and
Oh, burn it.
oh no, I donated to Goodwill. Someone else can wear that. It's
Nice.
try to help the less fortunate here wearing bad T-shirt apparel. Um, nah, the reason why he's still a name though, and that's a thing. How many of these guys you see bounce around, and it's like Teddy Bridgewater's still getting work, and like there's certain guys, man. It's just like maybe it's they're a professional. They come in, they do their job, and it's not going to bode well for Minnesota at this point. I tell you what, Justin Jefferson's going to get frustrated real quick.
Yeah, and all these veteran backup guys that kind of wash out and everything, they're all trying to be, the next Trent Dilfer or Jim Plunkett or, Brad Johnson. All these guys were journeymans, and they got their opportunity to shine, and yeah, they won a Super Bowl, but it's going to be tough for Wentz to get out there. I know he played sparingly for Kansas City when he was there, and he probably learned under Mahomes a little bit. But Minnesota, let's see, who are they playing next? The Minnesota, the Cincinnati Bengals are at the Minnesota Vikings. So your matchup is Jake Browning versus Carson Wentz. I mean, that's a stinker if I ever heard one. And I can already see Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, throwing their hands up saying, "Come on, man, get the ball to me."
That one's on ESPN, the Ocho. There's no way that's going to be on anything national whatsoever. They might go old school closed circuit TV in the Cincinnati, Minnesota markets where the TV station has to buy up the rest of the tickets. That's a bad watch, man.
Yeah, it's actually in Minnesota on CBS, 1 o'clock Eastern time. So yeah, not a frontline game, but this is what happens. I mean, you get these matchups. I still remember like Colt McCoy having to play on a Monday night, and they were searching for storylines and everything. So, it did. But hey, maybe he'll come in there. I still remember as a guy that's been following the Eagles my whole life, and you probably remember this game. Coy Detmer. No one gave the Eagles a chance. The guy that goes to what Kmart and buys his outfits and everything. He shows up for the game out in San Francisco, and San Francisco on a roll. And Coy went out there and just had the game of his life. I mean, you remember that one?
I was at a bar in Delaware watching it because Corey Detmer had the neck beard and everything else. It was real gross looking. For some reason, the Eagles come out and they're winning the game. Well, one of our friends was in the bathroom early when they took the lead. We made him stay in the bathroom the rest of the game. There was TVs in the bathroom, but we brought him beers the whole time because he couldn't jinx the team. That's what I remember about that game.
Stay in the bathroom. You're the mush, the
Yep.
Bronx Tale, baby.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's a situation where the backup quarterback is always, the most popular guy as long as he's playing well, and yeah, you talk about Coy Detmer. I remember covering that Jeff Garcia season where he came in for Don McNabb, and there were points where people were like, oh, give him the job, because he brought that moxie. They won a playoff game, and eventually you knew it was going to run out his luck, but he played just very well, and same thing with AJ Feely at certain points, and people were excited about him. But a lot of times when you get a backup, it's like Mike McMahon City. You know what I mean? You're like, oh no, it's this guy's coming in there. The other team's not afraid of him. They're gonna, sack and harass him, and it's going to be interesting to see how these teams kind of weather the storm. But this is what happens when it's a war of attrition around the National Football League that we were talking about. So. Um, so a lot of injuries. You had Aaron Jones as well go out with a hamstring for the Vikings. Justin Fields, I'm glad he was on my bench, Kevin. He gets a concussion. The Jets, and we'll talk about their effort. That was they got clobbered. And then Jalen Johnson for the Bears, he's got a groin. Unfortunate for the poor Carolina Panthers, they lost two of their starting offensive linemen. So a season that's gone awry already after 2 weeks is only going to get worse for the poor Panthers. But we're going to start talking about on the field action here at Lloyd Vance Insider Football 1029 Game, Coastal Sports Digital Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. Check him out on X at Philly Kevin, and I'm at Lloyd Vance on X. All right, the game, and this you probably were like, oh, I'm not. You probably were saying I'm not enjoying this because it's two of the Eagles' biggest rivals, but you had to enjoy the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. What a game it was, Kevin. I mean, back and forth action. The Cowboys win this one 40-37 in overtime. And, Russell Wilson, you thought through the pass of the game, he threw a bomb and hit Neighbors in the end zone. They take the lead. All the Dallas fans, they look like they're going to throw up and everything. But somehow Dak gets them to not even midfield, but close to midfield. And Brandon Aubrey's just ridiculous. They probably need to check his leg. You know what I mean? He reminds me of, we grew up $6 million man. I mean, that guy, he's got bionics in there. 64-yard field goal. It hits the net and the wall to tie the game, and then they go in overtime, and the Cowboys win it on a 46-yarder by him. So, talk about this game, and should people be excited about the Cowboys, or it's just like, all right, you beat the Giants. Come on.
Well, let's go with one thing first. Dallas's defense doesn't miss Micah Parsons at all. No, he wouldn't have helped in that game whatsoever. Also, Brandon Aubrey, he can kick field goals as soon as he hits the parking lot off the bus. That guy has a leg that I have never seen before. I mean, it doesn't matter where he's at. And the fact you got him a kick under 50 to win the game, yeah, that was happening. And lastly, I want to point out, I'm sorry to say this, I was rooting for the Cowboys to win that game. It hit two of my parlays. Hit two different parlays because the Cowboys won. So, yeah, I was rooting for Aubrey on those kicks.
Angel shaking his head behind the glass. I mean, Kevin's hey, he probably bet on two cockroaches running across the sidewalk, but I digress.
I'm not proud
The-
of myself. My wallet's proud, but I'm not proud.
and this game, you had to take the over. I mean, the over under was 44 and a half, and they scored 77 points. I mean, it was incredible. As you said, back and forth action. I didn't have a horse in the race, but I just was kind of, I was like, wow. And Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson combined for over 800 yards passing. I mean, it was like, all right, let Russ cook. And the funny thing was, um, Jackson Dart came in for about 3 plays, but he handed the ball off. So I was like, what? This is kind of odd, because Wilson was having such a good game. Obviously, at the end, though, Russ did have that bad interception in overtime that kind of set up the Cowboys for the game winner. Dak has their number. I mean, he's won 13 straight versus the New York Giants. Um, do you think this can spur the Dallas Cowboys in terms of looking at their schedule? They're at the Bears, game they can compete at. Then they have the Micah Parsons Bowl. They'll be hosting the Green Bay Packers week 4, at the Jets, at Carolina, Washington, at Denver. They have Arizona and then a bye. So is this going to get them back in the race?
No. The whole thing is the Dallas Cowboys, they're the picture of mediocrity. They can score points. Regular season, Dak can hang some points. You get Dak in a playoff game, it's a different situation. That defense is not good. It's not. I mean, they have a couple secondary guys that are decent and everything, but they can't get pressure that much. They're not going to be a item at the end. I mean, once again, they're going to be like Cincinnati will be around 500 trying to sniff the playoffs. They might win 9 games if they're lucky. And the things that they need to do though, they need to beat the teams they should. Henceforth, the Giants and the Bears coming up. Those are the games they need to win.
Yeah, correct. And in a situation where, I think they do beat up on the lighter teams. And when they step up in class, they're going to get knocked out because, as you said, that defense. Yeah, they get Kenny Clark coming over, but there's just not a lot of playmakers in terms of that defense, especially their pass rush. I don't see them getting home at all. I mean, Wilson was very comfortable back there. As I said, it was Bombsway, Malik Neighbors. They didn't care if it was a double team in the back or not. The corners are pretty good, but Diggs is banged up. Bland's kind of banged up in terms of their corners. So I think Dallas, yeah, they'll be in the national front page for a little while, but that'll be that. I was talking to my brother though and my cousins. We had a family function this weekend, and some of them are Cowboys fans, and they were talking about, oh, there's a Glory Days Netflix show, about the Cowboys and how Jerry was the architect and built this whole thing. Have you watched 1 second of it? Because I haven't.
I am not watching some propaganda crap on Netflix about the Cowboys. I am good, man. I watched Tiger King like I did on COVID before I watch that again.
Yeah, I watched The Last Dance with the Bulls, and it's like, okay, I've already seen these games and everything, but it was at least you got a different perspective. But I'm not going to sit there and listen to Jerry Jones pat himself on the back, isn't talk about what they did 30 years ago and Michael Irvin, what a great guy he is. Come on, and it's just pandering. But the thing is, I will give him credit for he's built the best brand in the National Football League in terms of the stadium and how much money they make and all that stuff. But on the field, they're not winning anything anytime soon. And I know you're not going to shed any crocodile tears for
No, I wish them nothing but considering the future success they're about to have. I look forward to seeing it. I'll put it that way.
them. Yeah, so the Dallas Cowboys, they're the past, but the biggest game, and we got to talk about this, was a Super Bowl rematch. We always pretty much go local here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. The Philadelphia Eagles, I told Angel when I came on, they survived. They won 20-17 over the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl rematch. Game was nothing like the Super Bowl. It was kind of was like, all right, who's going to land the first punch here? And there were 8 punts in this game. The Eagles punted 5 times, Kansas City 3 times. Eventually, the biggest play obviously was Mr. Taylor Swift. Travis Kelsey is at the goal line. He's about to catch a touchdown pass. and he kind of knocks the ball in the air, and then the Eagles intercept it, and they're going the other way, and then that just kind of turned the tide of this game. So, give me your initial take on this game. The Chiefs have lost three in a row for the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era, and you just wonder, can they come out of it? So, talk about the direction of these two teams.
I think as far as the Eagles go, the Eagles could easily be 0-2 right now. That wouldn't be a surprise to anyone if the people that have watched the games. I mean, there are situations they could have lost either game. That being said, though, we talked about last year with the Kansas City Chiefs how they kept winning games at the end, like in just odd, particular ways. And the fact is, we said because the Chiefs know how to win at the end, they know how to close. The Eagles might be walking into that room right now where it's like we know how to win games. We know we might. They're not even playing their best football right now, which is actually a good thing. They're growing as the season goes on, but they're not losing games, and that's what you need to do is stockpile wins to get that home field advantage.
Yeah, and I always tell everybody you want to stack wins early in the season, and then that'll benefit you when you're going, down the stretch, December, January, when you got to get it done. So, big win for them. A couple things I took from this, it the Chiefs were an underdog at home, so it was just like, all right, I was on BYP with Rich Q, and I said I just can't bet against Mahomes and Andy Reid. They always find a way to win. They don't usually lose back-to-back games, but they're 1.5 point dog in Arrowhead for like the first time in 70 games. But there's just something amiss with this team, especially offensively. They really miss Rasheed Rice. Xavier Worthy did not play with that uh, shoulder injury, and then Pacheco. We talked about this, is not running the football effectively to the point where Patrick Mahomes is their leading rusher again for a second week. He had 7 carries for 66 yards. And then he was having difficulty just getting the ball to his receivers. Hollywood Brown, 5 targets. He only had 5 receptions for 30 yards. So, as they move towards Sunday Night Football, and we'll give our picks on that, but they're playing the Giants on Sunday Night Football. I think it's a get right situation for them. Can they turn this thing around? What does Big Red need to do?
If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, I think a lot of their problems are at the running back position over the years. I don't know if they haven't drafted well, if they're not using these guys well. Edwards Hilaire was a high draft pick. He didn't work out. Pacheco, same. They couldn't. He seems like he has talent, but they can't figure it out. So if they had an effective running game or something to take the pressure off, Mahomes could maybe do a little more with these not as great wide receivers and an aging Travis Kelsey. That being said, once again, Kansas City, this is a get right for him. And the whole thing is, anybody watching the game, you're just going to hear them applaud Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid as Kansas City builds up a 20-point lead on these guys.
Yeah, I can hear Collinsworth already waxing poetically about them, and they do need it to get right because they're 0-2, and you go 0-3. Only 6 teams have only made the playoffs since 0 and going 0-3, since 1980. So it just shows you your chances are not very good. I know that I think in 2018, not that far ago, we saw the Texans kind of do it, but it's a recipe for disaster. It's just a big hole. And we saw the Bengals, as we said, in 2024. They had that 0-3 start, very hot at the end of the season, winning 5 straight games, but it was just like not too much too late, and they couldn't get into playoffs, and they had to watch other teams get in. So, I know that the Chiefs will be in desperation mode. Uh, Big thing also, though, from this game on it, and I wanted to get your opinion on the tush push. It survived in the spring meetings. Some teams voted against it, but during the broadcast, Dean blamed Dino. Was like, "I hate this play." He's the officiating guy for the Fox. He's like, "You can't see what's going on." There was a couple obvious. There was one time. There was, I think, about 2 or 3 times I saw, even on one touchdown, where the Eagles false started before the ball was even snapped. And then there was another time where the Chiefs try to knock the ball out of their hand, inexplicably, they'd be off sides, but neither of them were called. So was it bad officiating, or is this, tush push fatigue? What do you think about that play going forward?
I think there is tush push fatigue because the Eagles are winning with it. No one else can do it like the Eagles can. So that once again, the team that just won the Super Bowl and they're using it successfully, it's like all of a sudden this hatred for the play comes up. I hate to play myself. I thought I wanted it to be voted down. I just don't like it. It doesn't. Everyone can do it though. That's the thing. It's not like the Eagles or anyone's allowed to
Right.
do it. So, and if the league had such a problem with it, besides the Packers who vehemently were against it, it's just voted down. But they didn't do it, so suck it up at that point. It's like you guys didn't vote it down. It's a legal play, and so that's on you.
Right. Right. And you know what? The Eagles have perfected it. I saw last night the Vikings try to do it, and they got stuffed and it was a short fourth and inches or whatever, and they couldn't get it done. So I think Stoutland and the Eagles and Hurts, they're just meticulous about how they run that play, and you can say it's a disadvantage to other teams, etc. But it's legal, and I know Sirianni, he's going to keep doing it
I
until they
know.
tell him not to. So it's here to stay, and I think the Eagles are going to use their advantage. It was funny at the end of the game there was an exchange though between Chris Jones and Jalen Hurts, and you saw Chris Jones. He's like, "Man, you didn't even throw for 100 yards in the game," and then you can see Hurts' mouth. He goes, "Shut your dumb A double SS up. We won the game." So just talk about that in terms of the rivalry. You know, wasn't Hurts' best game, but what do you think about his performance? And I think a big thing was the Eagles getting back Jalen Carter. He was really controlling the middle, and the Chiefs couldn't get anything going.
I think Jalen Hurts is has the mentality of a quarterback you want. He has the mentality of a quarterback that's won a Super Bowl. He's concentrated on wins. He's not just sitting there trying to pad his stats and everything else, hang some numbers. He'll do whatever it takes to win a game. If he has to run the ball for 2 touchdowns, if he has to throw the ball deep, he'll do it. Hopefully he'll do it later in the season. They have to work out their wide receiver situation because AJ is going to get loud real quick, man. That's coming. And especially with Goddard out, it's like, all right, that's one less mouth to feed right there. So it's like he needs to get the ball to these guys and make them happy. But Jalen Hurts is going to do what it takes to win games.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and that's what it's all about. Winning games, and the Eagles, to their credit, the big thing was they had no turnovers, but they caused the key turnover in this game. They held the ball for 32 minutes and 34 seconds, opposed to Kansas City only had 27. And KC, they looked like if they had a little bit more time, they could have possibly got back in this game, but they ran out of time, and the Eagles beat the clock up, and that's what the best teams do. They may be boring. The old Patriots, that's what they used to do. And yeah, AJ Brown may not be happy with 5 catches for 27 yards, and Devontae Smith 4 catches for 53 yards, but it's all about winning. So yeah, see, Jerry's a Patriots guy, and he says, as a longtime Pats fan, I love Hurts, and you know what? It's all about just winning. And you think about Tom Brady early on in his career, a lot of people say, oh, he was kind of right along. They had a very good running game. They had Belichick and a very attacking defense, but he was a caretaker and he got it done. So, everybody gets enamored with all these fantasy football numbers and all that, but a lot of times they don't win. A lot of teams with that big receiver don't win. So, Kevin, talk about the impact of just having an efficient quarterback. And I'm not even going to say can they win because we've already seen it. We saw it last year with Hurts and some other guys. So what do you think in terms of Hurts?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. The classic example of this, as we say, for the guys hanging numbers for fantasy, for big contracts and all that, go back in time. Look at Terry Bradshaw winning his 4 Super Bowls, and look at Dan Marino. Which career would you have rather have had? Terry Bradshaw getting those teams to win those championships, or Dan Marino, who deserved one. I mean, he's the most talented passer I might have ever seen in my lifetime, but never getting one. Got to the one Super Bowl, I believe, the second season, and never got back. So, yeah, it's all about winning at the end of the day. That's all people remember, that kind of stuff. Going forward, though, they need to figure some things out because, like I said earlier, they could easily be 0-2 right now. That offense still is working some things out. They need to fine-tune it. They have time because they did go 2-0 and won those games. 0-2, there's panic mode right now. So they just
Yep,
need to figure it out. They got some time.
correct. I remember with a couple of years ago where it was Sirianni. They were on a losing streak, and everyone's like, "Get him out of here!" And he turned it around, and they won the Super Bowl. So the good thing is win these games, stay healthy, which is huge. We talked about injuries right out the bat on this show, um, and then just make the adjustment. So yeah, the Eagles. There's a couple things. The second cornerback position, I didn't think Dory Jackson played that bad in the game. They did allow Thornton. First one, though, Thornton was wide open. I mean, talk about Mahomes missing that throw. I was just like, how in the world? But then he turned around and Thornton had a nice catch in double coverage for a 47-yard or so touchdown that kind of got that game close. But um, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles can weather the storm of being a defending Super Bowl champion. I know they keep saying no, we're not defending. Everything's new. Get out of here. They're still enjoying it. Oh, I meant to ask, did you go buy a box of Cooper DeJean? He has his own cereal, Kevin. I went
Hmm.
to the supermarket. I snapped a picture. I said, "Are you talking about oversaturation?" I mean, okay, he's a nice kid. He had a nice rookie season. Touchdown in the Super Bowl, but his own cereal? Seriously?
All the girls love Cooper DeJean. It's like there's a couple girls I work with. They went to an Eagles event like right before the season started, and they all got their pictures with Cooper DeJean. They're all
Oh,
blushing and everything else. Oh, he's that guy right now. He did a lot of guest bartending stuff at the shore. He even did it
yep.
down in Maryland in the Chesapeake area. So yeah, he's that guy. He's the marketable guy right now, and they're cashing in with him.
Yeah, Backstreet's back. All right.
Mhm.
Philly's Backstreet boy. It's funny. He's got to play it on the field, though. If he stops making interceptions and everything, they'll be turning on him. But yeah, for now, he's playing very well. I still think he's best served in the slot, uh, working blitzes, kind of helping to cover the tight end. Some folks have always said put him on the outside. I don't think that's a good idea, and I see you shaking your head. So I just wanted to get your take. I saw that cereal. I was like, oh my goodness, he's got his own cereal. You know what I mean? But good for him. I mean, hey, make that money while you can, youngster. So we're talking about week 2 around the National Football League here in Lloyd Vance Insider Football. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. We're just going around some of the marquee games, news and notes. Uh, Thursday night, this was it was a pretty good game. The Packers are now 2-0. They beat the Commanders 27-18. In this game, Jordan Love has continued to play very well, and they're getting a running game from Josh Jacobs, and then Micah Parsons had a ton of pressures. The defense looks like it's coming together. So, how dangerous are the Packers? Are they the number one seed in the NFC?
I think right now they're the best team in the NFC after 2 weeks. There's a lot of season left to play, but they seem to be the team that's come out with the most authority of saying, we're here, we're not going anywhere. And we touched on it last week. Micah Parsons, he brought the tenacity to that team that they were lacking. He brought the vocal ability to take all the attention of young Jordan Love and all the young guys on offense, besides Josh Jacobs, of course, and focus it on him, where these guys can just concentrate and play, and he's going to take it for better or worse. He'll take the load. So, I mean, that was a huge pickup. And the long term, is it good for him? Probably not. But if they cash in with a Super Bowl in the next 1 or 2 years, oh, yeah, it's a great trade.
Yeah, and Matt LaFleur, he's going to win double-digit games, and he'll keep that offense straight. Obviously, a big thing is that they got to figure out what they're doing with their receivers. Have that number one guy, and a lot of times they don't even have number two. They have Jaden Reed recently got hurt pretty bad, shoulder injury. So they got to figure that out. But yeah, I agree with you that the Packers are looking like that front line team. Uh, they have Cleveland this week. There's your survivor pool special, a lot of people, because Cleveland is terrible. Okay. And Joe Flacco, yeah, he got to go home to Baltimore, and he went to go back, and he got his butt handed to him by the I knew that was going to happen. The Ravens beat the poor Browns 41-17. That's 8 straight losses for the Browns, and I don't know. What do you think about the Ravens? What did they get right? Everybody, Lamar Jackson, they're like, I know it's all about the playoffs with Lamar Jackson, but is he right? Are they ready to roll? They have Miami this week. No, I'm sorry. They have Detroit this week. That's a huge game for them. Um, but talk to me a little bit about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and are they right now?
Well, once again, I like to lead into the gambling forefront. Out of the parlays I hit, I had the Ravens by 12.5 on two of them because I'm just like, this is happening. And they
They were
usually
given 11 and a half, people.
I
Wow.
got 12.5, and it was like they still hit it by a mile. So it was one of those. It was, and they usually play some ugly games with Cleveland, but with Flacco there, I just didn't see it happening. Yeah, they have some issues though because that unfortunately is one of the games I got to see down here. And Derrick Henry was terrible in this game. He hasn't been the same since he fumbled that ball against Buffalo. He was just going up and down the field against Buffalo, had the big fumble, and next thing you know, he can't get right now. And Mark Andrews is another problem. He had a drop pass that would have been a touchdown as
Yeah.
well. So they have some things on their end they have to figure out.
Yeah, in Baltimore, everybody, it's playoffs or bust with them. Obviously, it might have been an AFC Championship preview in Week 1 when they played against Buffalo. I think looking at the way the Chiefs are playing now, yeah, I think it may be Buffalo and Baltimore again. I mean, it's very early. That'd be fun to watch again. The two former MVPs going at it once, but they have some things to clean up. And it's interesting because the defense, everybody's talking about defense with Baltimore. Like, this defense is going to, you know, but they're looking a little slow at a couple positions, particularly at the linebacking position. They're not making plays they need to. I think they rely too much on Kyle Hamilton. They need to get some more heat from the defensive line. So some things to clean up from Baltimore. As I said, Detroit, that's going to be an interesting game because Detroit, man, I think they exposed the poor Bears even worse. They just destroyed the Bears in this game, ran up and down the field on them. Is there any hope for your guy Caleb Williams and the Bears?
One thing I like to think though is I think Detroit ran that score up. We got our old offensive coordinator there. Yeah, let's hang some points on him. Let's see. Let's show him we can still do it without him being here. I definitely think that happened. Now Caleb Williams, when we saw the first game against Minnesota, he doesn't have any touch. He can buy some time. He can get around, but he doesn't have any touch. It doesn't seem like. Besides Dunze had a great game though. I will say that much. But I don't think he's there yet. I think next year is his make or break year. I think you ride with him this year, and year 3 is where you're going to know whether or not he can play.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because I think Dan Campbell ran that score up too, and he wanted to make sure that his team got right. You know what I mean? Because it's a situation where they just looked really bad in Week 1, but they turned it around, and I think Ben Johnson, okay, you got your flowers and you got the head coaching job, but you're going against who's your daddy.
Mhm.
So good win for them. Detroit was dominant, but in looking at the standings, Kevin, you got 9 teams. You have 8 teams at 2-0 going into tonight. Obviously, 8 teams at 2-0, 11 at 1-1, and you got 9 at 0-1, 0-2. So in the past, in 2024, 9 teams started 2-0, and 6 of them made the playoffs. This season, I wanted to get your take out of the 2-0 teams. Which one's for real? Which one's kind of fraudish? So I'll name the teams, and you kind of. So these are the halves that are 2-0: the Rams, Eagles, Bills, Colts, Niners, Cardinals, Cincinnati, and Green Bay. So out of those, who has the least chance of making the playoffs? Who's going to kind of blow it? I'll obviously throw out, Cincinnati's going to be tough without Browning, so you can take that layup off the table.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that was a little tip in right there. So take Cincinnati off the table until we see it week after week after week. I'm yanking the Colts off the table. They have some pieces there, but it's Danny Dimes. We've seen him. I mean, could he be a different guy there? Sure, he could be. But I mean, they're actually a fun team to watch right now as well. I mean, they're playing,
yeah,
fun football. But I mean, check me out around mid-October if I'm buying into the Colts punch.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. But they do have DeForest Buckner and some playmakers on that defense with Franklin and some of the other guys. And Taylor's having a very nice season once again, catching the ball. But the receivers, you're like, Pittman, the Downs is kind of hanging around. So we'll see. But yeah, they're excited in Indianapolis, particularly with it's crazy. Daniel, it's funny how this happens. Daniel Jones, now he's stepping forward. Maybe he'll be that guy. Maybe that quarterback comes out of nowhere, like we said, that resurrection. We saw it last year with Sam Darnold. Colts beat the Denver Broncos 29-28. They were able to leverage a penalty that gave them a second chance on a game winner, and they were able to get that done. So, yeah, Colts 2-0, and we'll see how they do. They're at Tennessee. So maybe and if you're talking about survivor pools, you're like, let me use them. Let me let me see if I can sneak one and get the Colts out of the way and get a win. But 3-0 is very prevalent because Tennessee, they're definitely one of the worst teams in the league. All right, so yeah, I kind of agree with you there. The other one, I I'm doing not doing this just because it's Nate, but Arizona, yeah, they're 2-0, Kevin. But I don't know. They're looking a little, like, yeah, you're 2-0, but So what do you think about the Cardinals 2-0? Are they for real?
I literally did not say Arizona because I didn't want Nate to start taking this stuff personally. I was like, all right, I'll go the other way on this. But since you brought it up, uh, Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know if this guy's figuring it out or what, or they can get him the ball to be successful. For as high of a pick as he was, how much time do you give this guy? If say he doesn't get it together this year, what point are you just like, all right, we got in name recognition alone, it's like we need to move on.
Yeah, and McBride's their biggest playmaker right now in that offense. I mean, he's catching a lot of passes at tight end position. Kyler's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He seems like he does not want to take any pressure, not running the football as much. Um, yeah, it's a nice story. They're 2-0, and we'll see if they're able to keep it going. They're at San Francisco this week in a huge divisional battle. Then Seattle, who's been playing pretty well, and then Tennessee in week 5. So I always thought Arizona had a chance to get maybe that 6th or 7th seed and sneak into the playoffs, but they're going to have to get some consistency. They had a big turnover by Xavier Collins this week, but somebody else may have to step up. And as usual, you wonder, is James Conner going to make it through the season and they're going to be able to run the football effectively? So Arizona, I'll say, let's wait and see, whether they're a fraud or not. Now let's swing the other way. 0-2 teams. Now last year there were 10 0-2 teams at this point in the season. 3 of them made the playoffs. And we all remember Baltimore, they started 0-2, but then they went on that run. They won their division. This season, 0-2. And this is a fun one, and we'll play fraud or not. All right. I'll save the best one for last, or somewhere in the middle. New Orleans Saints, 0-2. I mean, do they have any chance? I mean, Spencer Rattler's actually he's not playing that bad. I'm not telling anybody to pick him up in fantasy or anything. But New Orleans, fraud or not, is their season cooked?
Their season was cooked before they put the pads on in training camp. I tell you what, though, if I'm New Orleans, I might not want to finish with that one pick. I mean, Arch Manning, he's really lighting it up over there at the University of Texas. Talking about a kid who needs to cook a little longer in the pot before he comes out. He doesn't look ready at all. No, Spencer Rattler is playing okay. I mean, he's better than any of us thought he was going to play.
Right.
And they actually came back and gave San Fran a little run there. But it's hard to call them a fraud. They're just bad.
Yeah, and I I think next week I'm going to take Seattle over them in the Survivor because the game's in Seattle. So yeah, we'll say New Orleans. Yeah, kind of fraudish. We'll see how they do. Carolina Panthers. This team, 0-2. Bryce Young, I mean, number 1 pick overall, is not looking good. So I'm going to say, yeah, Carolina's a fraud. And David Tepper, their owner, is very impatient. Canales may be on the hot seat already.
The whole thing with Bryce Young, I had him written off until the back end of last season. I'm like, all right, there's something there. And even though fantasy numbers don't translate over to real game numbers,
Right.
he did a little bit of positive stuff on Sunday. I think they have a decent rookie wide receiver, McMillan. I think he's going to be a player. I think their running game is bad. I think their offensive line is bad. So, yeah, I mean, for the purposes of this, yeah, fraud. They're not a good team.
Yep. And Tennessee Titans, yeah, they got some fight in them. They got Simmons on the D line, and everybody's saying, well, Ward, he looks kind of comfortable there, but I think it's going to take some time. Tennessee Titans, I think a lot of people are going to use them to stay alive. And what do you think with them? Do you think they're going to be in the mix again to get a first round pick?
If they win 4 games this year, they should throw a parade. They're not good either. I don't know if they just have too many young guys, and they have some older guys they should probably move. Ridley, Pollard. It's just not going to work out with the mix they have right now.
Yeah. And I'll throw these next two in the same pot because it's the same city, and you're a Philly guy, and no one's crying for New York. New York is 0-4, and they're taking it on the chin. I mean, who's going to win first? The Jets, who have Fields in concussion protocol, they're not sure he's going to play, and it'd be Tyrod Taylor out there, or is it going to be the Giants finally turn into Jackson Dart? I mean, who's going to win first out of these two New York teams?
I'll pose this question to you: combined Giants and Jets combined win total over 10.5. Yes or no?
I'm going no at this
Yeah.
point. And you tease me because I thought, oh, maybe the Jets will do something this year. They got Aaron Glenn coming in there, but Brees Hall didn't do anything last week, and the Bills did not play a great game. They just thumped them 30-10. It was a laugher, and Trubisky went in there and made some plays when Josh Allen got his nose hurt, and Cook was all over the place in that game. So yeah, and we talked about the Giants earlier. They're just a sieve. Yes, Abdul Carter is a rookie to watch, and he's going to get some heat along with Burns, but they're a bad team. And Daboll, he's another one. He may not make it. I think him putting Dart in there, he's going to say, oh, okay, well, I can work with the kid. I can, I'm the quarterback guru. Well, he had his chance, with Daniel Jones. He didn't get it done. And you know, yeah. So I think not 10.5 wins for both them. And I will say, obviously, both them are fraud. They're not going to turn their season around. Going to be tough times for New York, but nobody in Philly's crying for them. You know, the Phillies are hoping the Mets don't make the playoffs. I'm still mad last year that Phillies lost them in the playoffs. So we'll see how that goes. We're here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 Game, Coast Sports Network. We're talking about teams that are 0-2, who can turn it around. There's a couple more left. I think I knew the answer. The Cleveland Browns.
Stop.
Let's turn this. All right, so I'll spin it around. Who's worse, the Titans, the Browns, or the Saints?
I'm going to say that's a very good one, actually, Lloyd. That one's a thinker. I'm going to say for this purpose, I will say I go the Saints. I think the Saints are. Browns defense, besides that Baltimore game, I mean, the Browns defense, Flacco can hang some points sometimes. Judkins actually might be a problem at running back. He looked good. He actually did look good. So they might have a little something there. And then with New Orleans, I just think New Orleans is bad. I just think
they're bad, and Kellen Moore's coming in there, and even if they turn to Tyler Shook, their rookie quarterback, it's not going to be any different. You feel bad for Kamara and Chris Olave, who I've always liked, but he can't kind of stay healthy. He's always kind of banged up there at the receiver position. But yeah, I think it's going to be a long year for the Saints and Cleveland. I guess it's Shador watch because I did see Dylan Gabriel get in the game for a little bit, And I'm sure everybody's saying, when should Orr going to get his turn? But when do you think they'll turn to one of the youngsters? I mean, I'm going to go over to Cleveland's schedule. It's going to be rough for them. Uh, they have Green Bay this week, at Detroit, Minnesota, at Pittsburgh, Miami, at New England, and they have their bye week 9. So when do we think one of these young guys gets in?
I think there will be a Flacco injury after the fourth game of the season. I think they let Flacco play the first month. I mean, think about it. Joe Flacco is playing, I mean, for his age and the years he's been in the league, he's giving them all he can. I mean, what are you expecting out of the guy at this point? He got you to the playoffs. Who would have thought that was going to happen? Yeah, so at that point, Gabriel, I think, is the first turn. As soon as Gabriel throws that first pick, then the fan base starts chanting Shadur Sanders, and that's going to be the whole thing back and forth all year with those two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And Jim Haslam, the owner there, and Andrew Barry, after the GM, after a while, it's going to be like, all right, let's just put the kid out there. Maybe it'll be a story. People start talking about him again because obviously, as you said, Cleveland's kind of back page and kind of fading out, and it's going to be a long season for them. 2-0-2 teams left to talk about here in Lloyd Vance Inside Football. Chicago Bears. This is an interesting one, Kevin. They were supposed to be the turnaround, and yeah, Roma Dunzier. We saw him. He had a big week, um, but there's not a lot else to get excited for there. Namely, Caleb Williams running for his life, looks tentative in the pocket. They had a big injury on defense, as I was talking about earlier. Jalen Johnson out with a groin injury. He's going to be out for quite some time. Anything you can say about Chicago? Can they turn this thing around, or is it going to get uglier?
If Caleb Williams can't figure it out and he can't develop any touch on the ball, that season's a wash already. He has some weapons there that he can utilize. He just doesn't know how to do it. So unless they can figure it out for him to be able to be a better passer and compose himself a little more in the pocket, it's gonna be a long season for him.
Yeah, I agree. And in Chicago, I think Ben Johnson, he's very particular, and I know he's not going to be happy after the way they got thumped by Detroit. And as we said, we think Campbell kind of ran it up on him. All right, I say the best way. The Chiefs are 0-2, a surprise to everybody around the nation. Can they turn this thing around? The get right game, we said, at the Giants this week, but then they have Baltimore, at Jacksonville, Detroit, the Raiders, the Commanders, at Buffalo, and then finally their bye in Week 10. So can they turn this thing around? I think a big thing, obviously, is Rashee Rice. He's still, has 4 more weeks on suspension. That's going to be tough for them. They need Worthy to come back. So just talk about, can they do it? It's funny because Rich Q, when we did our predictions, he told me, he said, this is a year they don't win that division, and maybe the Chargers do. So just talk about the Chiefs and where they are.
Can they do it? Yes. Yes. I mean, there's guys who have been there before. They know how to do it. I mean, looking back once again, the last year, all the losses that they turned into wins at the end, the way they escaped it. I mean, there was a point where, the Bills come and do. You can't keep playing like that and try to sneak games out at the end. And if you could place a bet right now, who's going to win the division, the Kansas City Chiefs or the field in that division, their money's going on the field. I mean, this is the Chargers and Broncos year to take that division. Hey, the Raiders could win tonight. I don't want to step out of bounds here too far, but the field is definitely in line to take the division this year.
Yeah, and I've always been a believer in, and we go back to when we made our Super Bowl predictions last year. I was like, you can't bet against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, a deadly combination, but they don't look. Not that they're not on the same page, but they just don't look as inventive as they were. I think a big thing is Travis Kelce. They count on him to control the middle of the field, and he's just not getting open. The Eagles covered him fairly well with Cooper, Serial, DeJean all over him. He was not getting open. And then we talk about the other receivers. You've got Juju Smith-Schuster, who's not getting any separation out there. They had Thornton, who was getting deep a couple times, but he's inconsistent as well. Just tough times for them, and they're just going to have to battle through it. But they've had so much success. It's almost like fatigue. You talk about the old Bulls teams in the NBA. A lot of times with Jordan at the end, you're like, "Oh, okay, they're the best. They won again. And you tell that last year they won 11 straight one-score games. They were 11-0 in those games, and they just always found a way. But this year, maybe a different story, and maybe I didn't hear anybody crying about the officials against. Uh, if anything, a lot of people say, "Oh, the Eagles are getting all the calls, not the Chiefs," but they're going to ruin it for both teams. So don't cry about the officials, anybody. All right, here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. We are almost to the time where we're going to make our predictions for next week. But before that, we got to do our weekly ritual. And Kevin and I did not discuss our picks or anything. Game ball winner for week 2, Kevin. I know there's some other games still being played, but who's your game ball winner?
Game ball winner out of nowhere. If you would ask me this last week, I would not have even remembered what team this guy was on. Mac Jones steps out of nowhere, taking the 49ers to a win. Mind you, was it over New Orleans? Yes, but he played efficient, and he might be able to be a little bridge until they can get Brock Purdy back to save that season.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Kevin, because they still have Christian McCaffrey, who's still holding up. I know it's very early in the season. He's still making plays for them, but they have no George Kittle. The offensive line's a little bit old. Some of these tight ends, I'm like, who is this guy? I mean, but they're catching touchdowns and they're making plays. And the defense led by Fred Warner is still flying around. So, in that division, right now they lead it, and it's them tied with the Rams. Yeah, I think the Niners could be a dangerous team, and that's a good pick. Mac Jones. But Nate reminded me he played pretty well as a rookie for the Patriots that one year, led them to the playoffs. So we'll see if he's able to get all the magic and yeah, and let's face it. I know Brock Purdy got the bag and everybody said, "Okay, forget about it," but he was Mr. Relevant. I mean, so
Oh,
it's not like he's knocking off, one of these top 10 quarterbacks, and we'll see how it plays out. And I mean, would Shanahan be crazy enough to bench his guy that he's paying over 50
God.
million? I don't think so, but good effort by um, Mac Jones there for the Niners. Uh, Before I give my pick, I got to give a shout out to Dallas kicker Brandon Aubrey. We talked about him. That kick. He was so calm making that 64-yarder. It was like, I got this, and he drilled it right there. And then he hits the 46-yarder to win it at the buzzer both times. So he saved Schottenheimer's bacon and got Dallas a win there. So he gets a shout out to me. But my game ball winner, we talked about this blowout earlier. Detroit won 52-21 over the poor Bears, but they were led by Jared Goff, and it was good golf this week. I mean, the last week kind of This week 23-28, 334 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. I mean, he wanted to show Johnson, hey, this is what I can do, and the Detroit Lions piled up 25 first downs, 511 total yards, didn't allow a sack, so they were just dominant. He was a trigger guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown, you got to talk about him too. He had 3 of those touchdowns. So, yeah, give it to Jared Goff, and we'll see if he's going to go. I'll go first on the lackey. I looked around. I was thinking, all right, who's going to be? But in the Steelers-Seahawks game, the Steelers were a home favorite. A huge play in this game was rookie Caleb Johnson was back to return a kick. And this is high school rule. I mean, what are you doing? So he muffs the kickoff and he just leaves it. He's just like, eh. And then Seahawks jump on it and they get a huge touchdown on a fumble recovery. They go on to win the game 31-17. This poor young guy, you thought, okay, he may get his opportunities eventually because Warren and the other back aren't doing that much. But he gets my lackey this week, Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, I think Caleb Johnson really found his way into the doghouse. I mean, he was already falling off a little bit. He was a higher draft pick in these fantasy leagues and everything else because they thought he was going to get an equal share with Warren. Kenny Gainwell comes in and
Yeah.
just takes his spot from him. So Warren and Gainwell are getting the load right there. And after that play, that's just dumb. That's knucklehead. So knuckleheads don't play. So he's going to be on the bench for a minute.
You got one for me, or
All right,
I can give me another one too.
I got a lackey for you, and
All right.
I think this one's personal for me as well because he was on my fantasy team. King Derrick Henry. He was running through Buffalo like a hot knife through butter. One fumble, and he's running hesitant. He can't. He's not trying to knock people over. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he's in his own dome right now. They even tried to give him the ball inside the 5. He went like a yard and a half and went down. I don't know what's up. Something's up there with the King, though. We need to check on him.
Yeah, Kevin, it was interesting because that game was kind of close for a little bit, and then Baltimore woke up and blew him out. But it was just like, what are you doing? This is the Browns. Come on now. They
Hmm.
must have known everybody took him into Survivor Bowls.
Yeah.
So, but they woke up, and it's a divisional game. But yeah, I was surprised the lack of numbers that he put up, and uh, maybe that fumble just took a lot out of him. But the Browns, they're a bad team, but their defense is hard hitting, and they do have Miles Garrett. But yeah, that's a good pick. I had to a shout out for the lackey Russell Wilson, and this, I mean, it's terrible that I did this to him. I mean, the guy's throws for 450 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, one of the passes a year to Malik Neighbors, but that INT in overtime was just egregious. I mean, it was just like, oh man, what are you doing? They got pressure on him. He just kind of threw the ball up there, and that just turned the tide of the game. So I got to give him a shout out for that. And then another quarterback I want to ask you about, Tua Tagovailoa. Tua. I think this may be it for him as a starter. Mike McDaniel. I think he's on a hot seat. He may go. Chris Greer, the general manager, he may go down there, and Tua just does not look good. Had a bad interception. They lose 33-27 at home to the Patriots. Can Tua and the Dolphins turn this thing around?
Absolutely not. There is no way they are turning it around. Everyone's going to be gone by next year. Tua's going to be gone. McDaniel's going to be gone. Tyreek's going to be gone. They're clearing everything out. I mean, nothing is working there. You have malcontents. You have guys who have just been injured so much over the years. And I think it's just time to start over if you're Miami.
Yeah, and Kevin, it's not going to get any easier uh, for Miami. They go to Buffalo. They have the Jets. That'll be the AFC East Toilet Bowl. We'll see about that game. At Carolina, and then they have the Chargers at Cleveland. So, I mean, we may see some bad games of these guys, but yeah, I agree with you that they're not going to turn that thing around, and maybe McDaniel not surviving. He may be that first head coach the way it's looking, and he's getting a little nasty in the pressers. That's how it's coming because he's getting a little snippy with the reporters. I'm like, oh man, just a matter of time. So we wrapped up week 2 here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on the Coast Sports Digital Network, 1029 The Game. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. We're going to turn our sights, do a quick wrap around on week 3 around the league. I mean, it goes so quick. I mean, but next thing you know, you're talking about Thursday. You know what I mean? It's just like, man, but I love it. I love the roller coaster it is the NFL. Thursday night, Miami Dolphins, who we were just talking about, 0-2. They are at the Bills, 2-0. I think Josh Allen's going to have a huge game out there. Um, there's not a lot of teeth on that Dolphins defense. Maybe Tariq gets deep. He gets some catches this week to keep him happy. But I think Buffalo wins big.
I think we're seeing a little more Trubisky in the fourth quarter. I think that's how that game's going to go down.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, see the Steelers, and we didn't talk about their game, but we talked about Caleb Johnson's boo-boo. But the Steelers, they were kind of a disappointment. And Aaron Rodgers, I knew it was going to happen. He looked great one week, and now he looked about 41 years old this week. So the Steelers are at the New England Patriots. Both teams 1-1. So I'm calling this a desperation bowl. I was back and forth on this pick. I think the Steelers find a way. Maybe it's T.J. Watt causing a turnover or something like that, but the Steelers win a close one.
I like how Drake May's developing. I think Drake May's becoming a decent NFL quarterback. I mean, he was efficient last week. He had a rushing touchdown as well. And they don't have any sexy weapons per se until they get Diggs up and running full speed. But I mean, they are playing a serviceable game there that gives them an opportunity to win ball games. So I'll lean on New England on that one.
Gotcha. Uh, Now this game we think may be a layup, may not. Yeah, the Indianapolis Colts 2-0. They're going to Tennessee. Tennessee could be dangerous, and this is kind of like a prove it game for the Colts. All right, are you going to be elite and beat a team that you're supposed to?
This is the one where the Colts lose because everyone's starting to load up on them. It's like, oh, look at Daniel Jones. Oh, this is where Vegas makes their money on games like this because everyone's like, oh, the Colts are playing so great. They're playing Tennessee. There's no way they lose that game. Not touching it. I'll take the Colts to win the game, but am I going to bet on it? Absolutely not. That has trap written all over it.
Yeah, I don't have the lines, and I agree with you. That'll probably be a big number, and that's the kind of game where people are like, oh, this is easy money, and next thing there's a surprise, and Ward gets hot or something like that. So we'll see how that game goes. But yeah, I'll say the Colts win, but it may be closer than people think. Uh, Green Bay Packers, they're going to the Cleveland Browns. It's a 1 o'clock start. Micah Parsons and that defensive line. I say Micah Parsons. Let's talk about over under on Micah Parsons. 2 sacks. Does he get 2 sacks against him? Obviously, we all know that the Packers are going to kill them.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think Joe's making it past week 4. But yeah, Joe's going to take some hits in this one. I think Micah gets his 2. I'll put it that way.
All right. This game, I know you and and everybody in Philadelphia have their eyes on it. The Rams come back. It's not going to be snowing like last time. Now, this is a fun one. Somebody's got to go. The Rams are 2-0. Puka Nacua had a big game this week. He had a 45-yard rushing touchdown. Going to be a good matchup with Cooper DeJean, who we were talking about earlier, Quinyon Mitchell in the secondary there. The Rams are at the Philadelphia Eagles rematch from a divisional round. That was a game that was pretty close. Hurts has got to, I'll preface it by Hurts has got to play better, but somehow I think they forced Matthew Stafford, 37 years old, to make a mistake. The Eagles win this one, but it's not going to be easy. I think it's going to be a close game.
I think it's going to be a close game as well. I don't know the point spread yet, but I mean, you get 3 for being at home. It's got to be somewhere around like 3.5, something like that, I would imagine. I'd take the Rams with the points if it's in that ballpark. I think the Eagles, I think there's been a lot of emotion there for the first game with Dallas and then playing Kansas City on the road for the Super Bowl rematch. I think you could see more of a letdown from the Eagles in this one. They're happy that they got the 2 games and they sit there and come out a little flat and maybe the Rams can steal this one.
Yeah, and they better guard against not being too overconfident that they beat them before. And I know the Rams will be probably more reserving. Last time Verse had a lot to say, and that was bulletin board material. But do you know who they got to stop? They got to stop Saquon Barkley because he had a field day on him in a divisional round, and that's going to be fun to watch. Last game we'll hit on here, Lloyd Vance, Insider Football. Detroit, this is Monday night next week, and this is going to be a good one to watch. Detroit Lions probably got right after that big win against the Bears, but they're going to the Baltimore Ravens. This could be a true shootout. 2 teams that scored more points probably than anybody in the NFL last year. I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a big game on this one. It's Monday Night Football. The bright lights are on, and he usually plays pretty well in prime time. I'll go with the Baltimore Ravens in a close win.
I mean, all right, Baltimore had the big win, but who'd they beat? Cleveland. Detroit had a big win. Who'd they beat? Chicago. I'll lean on Baltimore on that one myself as well, even though I don't want to. But I agree with you, though. That's going to be a great game, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one to watch. And man, time went quick. That's how you know a good show. Another great week here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coastal Sports Digital Network, and 102.9 The Game. Great job by Kevin. Hit all the news and notes. I don't think we missed anything. Great job with Angel behind the glass. And, we're looking forward to watching this nightcap game. Hopefully I can stay awake for it. Maybe the Raiders will pull a shocker over the Chargers. We'll see on that. But We'll talk to everybody next week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football.